Glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Andrew and I were chatting a little bit before and going through some of the questions and so forth. And we are right on time. So let's get rolling. All righty. Well, hey, welcome everybody. Hello, good morning, and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. It's 11:03 a.m. here on the West Coast. I'm glad to see all of you here today, and thank you for being here. My name is Larry Lamont, and I'm your host today. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available online, and I will send that out to you in a few days after we have cleaned up the recording and so forth and posted it in its permanent location. So a little bit about us at Recapture. We are passionate stewards of salvage, extending the life of building materials and buildings with three things. We have a solution to construction waste. We have the place to shop for and sell treasures of recaptured building materials at www.recapturit.com. And we have what we're here today for, which is help for cities to craft clear and effective reuse policy, which is the broad scope of today's discussion as part of what we call the DPA, rhymes with EPA, the Deconstruction Policy Accelerator. Yeah, we've entered into the world of planning and policy with cities and counties across the USA. This webinar is the fourth in an ongoing series of webinars, workshops, and boot camps provided to educate, inform, and even inspire officials, sustainability champions, to understand the need to move toward deconstruction from the total demolition and disposal of buildings. Yeah, these are not paper cups, people. We are throwing away whole buildings every day. Each of our events builds onto the others. The workshops and boot camps get into much more detail on how to. This webinar will be a practical, high-level conversation with two exceptional experts about innovations that they are building as part of the single best solution for eliminating the largest waste-producing practices in the world, construction and demolition waste. And what is that solution? Deconstruction and reuse of buildings and recaptured building materials. So this month's topic is your city needs this. Innovators turning one and done into again and again. Yep. I'm your host, the founder and CEO of Recapture It, the creator of the DPA. My background was actually in architecture. I went into construction and remodeling. I went into facilities management, taking care of buildings and overseeing remodels and so forth. And this is my seventh business I've started from scratch. I am a scrounger of materials and a fierce fighter against waste. But not so much about me. Let's talk about these guys, our expert panelists. We have two exceptional experts with us today, Andrew Ellsworth and Eric Law, and they're going to share their ideas with you today, and at the end, answer some questions. You can put those questions into the chat here. Eric Law, the founder and CEO of Urban Machine, is a mechanical engineer and an entrepreneur. He has founded companies and worked for others. He is an exceptional speaker, a leader, and an innovator. He has developed products, technology, and teams. Urban Machine is his latest, and I would say greatest. Andrew Ellsworth is a self-described eco-entrepreneur. He is an architect of buildings and ideas. He has a fierce passion for the environment and is an organizer of companies and communities. Doors Unhinged, clever name, is his company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania that is changing the way that buildings get designed and reused. And we're really glad to have these two amazing men with us today to share their knowledge and to instill hope for our future. I'm going to preface our conversation with a little bit about why innovation is so needed. This is one of my favorites. The thinking that got us to where we are is not the thinking that will get us to where we want to be. Our old friend Albert Einstein. I bring this up because as an industry, deconstruction and reuse of building materials needs a boost. It has not only not kept up with the growth rate of the combination of construction and demolition, but it continues to fall bit by bit behind. That's not just me saying that. That's what the EPA has told me. All the excellent work and best thinking applied to this problem has got us to where we are. So something needs to change. New thinking, innovation needs to come into the mix. So here is where that opportunity can happen. So I made this super snazzy chart, And it talks about the whole process chain of where building materials go and so forth. But yeah, you can't read it. It's breaks the rules of PowerPoints. So I'm going to write bigger to move us from linear to circular. The linear process, the make it, use it, and then throw it away linear process to circular is really about looking at the current sequence of processes of building materials life cycles and looking for new opportunities. This chart tells the tale of what happens to materials as they are taken out of a building as part of a partial or whole demolition or deconstruction. It talks about the processes in place and the processes which can be incorporated into this whole system to enhance sustainability and to move toward the circular use of building materials. So that's what it is, moving toward the circular economy of building materials. Note the orange bubbles with the word opportunity in each. Those are places within the processes which can replace the old methods with new methods. That's where these two gentlemen's businesses now operate. We're going to look at only a few opportunities, but there are a lot. So here's the old way versus the new way in the amplified or the magnified view of this chart. The old way is quite simple. It says at the start, there's the site removal of building materials. The building is going to be removed or it's going to be modified, remodeled, retrofitted, whatever. It's demolished and it's taken to a landfill. That's the simple way of the old way. But the orange bubbles, opportunity, skimming. The new way slips into this stream of processes with things like skimming and deconstruction and on-site preparation and transfer of materials for immediate reuse. This is the realm of Urban Machine and Doors Unhinged, our guests today. Yeah, we need innovation. This little slide, this little piece of that whole chart speaks to where decisions are made and by whom. Architects need to be able to specify. They call out materials that are going to go into a building. They don't order them, they don't buy them, but they do specify them. And they need to be able to depend upon the quality, the consistency, the quantity, and the timing of these materials. All these things need to grow and will, thanks to people like our panelists. So let's hear more, not from me, but from Eric and Andrew. Let's let them speak to their innovative ways. And like I always say, remember this, waste is not waste until it is wasted. So if I can find my unshare button, I can't at the moment. Anyway, okay. Anyway, let's start with Eric. And greetings to both of you, Eric and Andrew. Thank you for being here. Eric Law. Eric, you and I met more than a year ago, and I told you then that you had made an honest man out of me by introducing a new tool to the industry of deconstruction. For years, I'd been saying that once there is a sufficient market activity, we'll achieve some sort of a tipping point in deconstruction and reuse. Tool manufacturers would take notice and begin to support the industry with new tools and innovation. So Eric, I mean, robots, what? Wow, that's a big step. So what prompted you to begin such an ambitious design development process of such a complex tool?
Yeah, that's a big question, Larry. Thank you very much for having me on here today. It's great to catch up with you. Obviously, we've been chatting for the last year or so on and off about the deconstruction and reuse. And really, it kind of started Urban Machine was a combination of passion for sustainability, construction, and technology. For the last 20 years, I've been solving problems in the construction industry with technology, without technology. And going back and forth between the two. And so this is an opportunity to combine that with sustainability. So I was doing some research at a previous company.
Thank you.
Looking at the sustainability of construction and the waste streams coming off of our construction projects. And with those construction projects, what we learned was, concrete and steel both have recycle paths. Not the best in the world, but they're not going to landfills. But wood was going to landfills and incinerators. And when I started to dig deeper into it, I learned it's a massive problem. The US EPA says it's about 37 million tons a year of dimensional lumber, clean dimensional lumber, goes to landfills and incinerators. And to put that in perspective, that's about half what we log from our softwood forests on an annual basis. So it's a massive problem. And it's really the fasteners, those innovations that do such a phenomenal job at holding our buildings together, the nails, the screws, the staples, all these great fasteners are what's preventing wood from being reclaimed. It's laborious, it's tedious. Everybody has a story about pulling nails. Every conference we go to, somebody tells us about, their first job, their parents told them to do it, some side project. Everybody's pulled nails. It's awesome. And nobody likes it, right? Nobody says, oh, I love doing it. I want to do it all day long. We have not had a single person tell us that, which makes it a perfect problem for robots. Robots love doing those highly repetitive, dull, boring tasks that humans don't. And so that's when I reached out to some folks that I knew in the robotics community, and one of them, who's now my co-founder, Andrew, said, yeah, we can solve that with robots. And away we went. That was about almost 2 years ago now, that we joined up, and then we brought on another co-founder, Alex, on the computer vision AI side. And so today we've got our first machine out in the field pulling nails and staples out of lumber with robots, because nobody wants to do it. We're not replacing anybody's job. It's just all getting thrown away. So that's the cool thing about bringing robots in to solve a problem that the humans aren't doing today. I don't get that, oh, you're going to take somebody's job. Nobody tells me that, because nobody wants to pull nails 40 hours a week. It's just not there. And our goal is to do it at a cost competitive with virgin lumber. We want to make reclaimed lumber the same price as virgin. So we are competing with massive lumber mills that are spitting out billions of board feet. And we have a big advantage that our lumber is already in the metropolitan areas. And so we love seeing folks out there pushing for deconstruction, because that improves the quantity and volume of feedstock that we can process. If you take an excavator to a building, you get X percentage, a small percentage of recoverable material, because so much of it's smashed up. If you deconstruct a building, we can typically reclaim well north of 90% of the lumber material coming out of it. So there's a huge difference between demolition and deconstruction in terms of recoverable material. And with wood, you want to keep the fiber intact. So the more fiber you got intact, it's a high strength, natural material. The number one source for old growth material, housing stock, right? I can't get it from the forest today, so I can only get it from buildings. And it's tight grained, beautiful material that should not be going to landfills. We're probably one of the few businesses where the material we're processing is higher quality than the virgin coming out of your lumberyard today.
Amen to that. Yeah. Wow. Well, it's a great story. Yeah. Thank you, Eric. All righty. Andrew Ellsworth. Andrew, you and I were speaking a moment ago. Your background's in architecture, yet you've that entrepreneurial gene in you that sparks you to go out into the unknown, to lead and to inspire others, and to risk that secure path of the status quo, to do something important and untested. What inspired you to go into this niche of reuse of commercial doors?
So I want to say, first of all, thank you, Larry, for having me here. Eric, it's great to meet you. We've, I think, been in the same network for a long time, and we've never actually been face to face like this. Oh. But this will have to do until we can actually be in the same physical room. So how to get started with Doors Unhinged? So it dates back maybe about 10 years, maybe a little more, when I was working as a sustainable enterprise consultant. I had my own consultancy doing all kinds of sustainability stuff. And the idea of social enterprise was really important in what we were doing, and was really seeking opportunities to use the free market to solve social and environmental problems. I had been on the board of Construction Junction, a great material reuse center, a nonprofit here in the Pittsburgh area. They're just tremendous partners and friends of ours, and huge supporters of Doors Unhinged.
Yep.
And prior to that, I had been doing consulting with LEED certification with another company. And all these things was like trying to get them to work together because they seemed like they should, right? LEED rewarded material reuse and still does, but we just could never get it to line up. And so in the vein of social enterprise and sustainable enterprise, I sat down and said, all right, there's clearly an opportunity here, right? All this really high quality material going to the landfill after not that much use. Different than the residential market, the commercial market turns over very quickly. And really, these days is different, but in really hot times and hot markets, we've heard in the Bay Area, they don't give leases longer than like 2 years. And so the expectation is every 2 years, they're just going to tear everything out and put it in for the new tenant because everyone's growing and moving and right. And so the long end of that really is probably about 15 years. And so you have all this great material. The question is, how do you get it back to market? Right. And we hypothesized that the way you have to do that is to specialize. You have to look like what the other vendors and suppliers look like. You can't be the material reuse center, the Habitat for Restore, the Construction Junction, the Second Use, whatever you name them. Like they're in a sort of a B2C model where you go in there with your cart and it's awesome and there's cool stuff and there's old stuff and there's cheap stuff and it's all different kinds and it just is what it is. That's not how the commercial sector works, and it never has and it never will. And so don't try and force that model onto them, right? This is kind of the Buckminster Fuller, right? Is like create the new model. And so that just kind of led the idea is like, okay, we need to specialize. We need to have experience. We need to have depth of understanding and inventory and be able to focus in, and we can be that go-to on every single project. So at the time, looking at different options, it's like, well, you want something that's fairly modular. You want something that is kind of a kit of parts, something that is fairly easily recovered, something non-structural, non-thermal, that part of the envelope, at least to start. And most importantly, you need it to be high value. You need it to retain enough value and be a high enough initial value that you have to charge less, at least to start. There's no way you can say you're worth more than new. That's where we started anyway. And to do that, we just lost my train of thought for a second. So the value is what makes the difference. You can capture really good materials and have good percentage margins, but if the overall absolute amount of money you're making is very low, you're never going to get anywhere. So we looked at these options and really came up with only 2 ideas. One was lighting, but right, it fits all those needs. The problem was we were right at that point of technology transition between fluorescent and LED. So what would that mean? Everyone's going to trying to get rid of their fluorescent and buy LED, and that leaves you stuck with a lot of material that no one wants. The other option was doors, and if nothing else, it was just a stab in the dark. You know, it's like, why not doors? As it turns out, basically almost every building needs doors, and almost everyone has a door story. So it's very metaphorical. It ends up being a very tangible idea that people can connect with. It's like, oh, a door, you know, and it's not behind a wall, it's not theoretical. And so generally speaking, we wanted to transform the industry, and oddly enough, we ended up really at the bottom of the pile. But I think that's where the change is going to happen first, to really show where it can happen and how it can be done, instead of kind of talking about theory and waiting around for other people to do it. So I think one of our major innovations has allowed us to change the nature of the conversation to if and why, to how and when and where.
Nice.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, that's kind of the definition of leadership, going to where those that have not gone before and to start something new. So well done. And thanks for bringing up Bucky
Thanks.
Fuller. My shop teacher in junior high school
Yeah.
architectural drafting was a close friend of Buckminster Fuller, and
Really? That's
called him
exciting.
Bucky. Called him
Yeah.
Bucky.
That's really exciting, actually.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for that. And back to you, Eric. Our topic today is needed innovations in deconstruction and reuse of building materials. What is the innovation that you have captured as an idea and made into reality? Meaning, can you please tell us what exactly your machine is and does?
Yeah, absolutely.
Love this.
It's an automated nail puller. It's real simple. We pull nails, and it's pretty cool to listen to it and watch it on the videos, right? Everybody loves watching a robotic. And then we do it on 4 axes. So we pull all 4 sides of the wood at the same time. And then we threw in some computer vision AI to solve the problem of identification, right? So we're scanning the wood, we're taking pictures of the wood, we create a point cloud, we go in there, we identify all the fasteners that are in that particular piece of wood, and then we identify the best way to pull them out. And we keep training our algorithm to get better and better at it by running more wood. It's the true use case for AI. It's where the software is getting smarter and better. And it's actually solving a real world problem. So there is good use cases for AI besides all the hype and the Bitcoin out there and stuff. It's pretty cool to see it in action. And so it's really easy to explain. Underneath the covers, there's a lot of complexity to it. There's a lot of lines of software code. There's a lot of time and energy from the hardware engineers. We're on our 4th hardware iteration that's out in the field right now, and we're currently assembling our 5th iteration. And probably by the end of this year, we'll have our 6th iteration on the tech. And
Nice.
so it takes a lot of effort and a lot of learning to go build something, test it out, learn a ton from it, and then go build a whole nother unit. My last adventure was a SaaS company, and you just keep updating the code and you push new releases out on a weekly basis. Real easy, right? With the hardware, every time we iterate, we throw the old one on the shelf and build a whole new one, which is hard to do when you're looking at sustainability. You're like, wow, but it's only 1 unit. It's not like we're throwing 1,000 of them on the shelf. And most of the components are all reusable. They're all motors and stuff that other startups can use, or we can donate to schools, or we use in our labs here to test. So we're not throwing it away. But it's a rapid iteration pace that we're doing here on the hardware side. And it's a process that's been adapted by many other hardware companies as well. We're not the only ones doing this, of how do you quickly iterate on hardware? We don't have a decade like historically to go iterate on this. We got to move quickly. And in less than 2 years, 4 systems built. And from our first system to what we have today is leaps and bounds difference. And within the next year, will be another leaps and bounds before we start production next year. We'll be doing a small run production run in 2024.
Nice. Well, thanks for that. I am a big singer of praise for you guys, and have been ever since you and I initially met a year and change ago. And I think what you're doing is fascinating and fabulous. So glad to hear a little bit about what those bird beaks and so forth do.
Exactly.
All right, let's see. Andrew, speaking of those needed innovations, your background strongly influenced how you approach your business. I took similar cues from my architectural past in building my company, Recapture It. So it really kind of excites me to see this influence and direction. You are making important inroads into the architecture and design community with such things as written specifications for used doors. Can you please explain to our audience the thought process, the sequence of decisions that architects make that influence other decisions and other people, and why this is so important and innovative for the future of reuse and building more reuse into bigger projects?
Yeah, Larry, I guess that's really the secret sauce, isn't it? People have taken outdoors from all kinds of buildings for a long time. And I would say to some extent, some people have figured out how to move a few here and there. Like reuse centers do carry some commercial doors, but what they're not really doing is getting those into commercial projects at any real scale. And so that's where we brought value. That's where we think we did something different. We did improve the process of deconstructing and acquiring material just based on being able to focus and invest in equipment and storage and things like that that maximize their value. I would say the way we've had to think about this and continue to think about it, and I urge basically everyone in this space to think about it, is how do you make the material you have look like what your customer is asking for, right? Wood without nails in it, right? There's a great start, right? That can then be planed down in shape, be like, oh, now that's like 5/4. I know what that is, right? Doors, it's like, oh, okay, I asked for a door that was like clear birch, 3 foot by 7 foot with a hollow metal frame and a cylindrical lock. Oh, okay, right? And so that is the essence of the challenge, is getting architects to see your product as being what they asked for, and then also being comfortable with you and your process. Me, I should say, us. So the architect is kind of a proxy, but they're a very important influencer, right? There's the architect, there's the contractor, there's the owner, and then there's some other, maybe some other players involved. They need to have that comfort level that it's going to work. It's going to look good. It's going to meet pass code and inspection, that it's going to last, right? That they're going to feel proud to march their employees and their partners and their investors and their customers through that space. And so that, this market is so resistant to change because the risks are high. And for a long time, no one wanted to stick out their neck and be the first one to say, hey, we'll give that a shot. We don't know what's going to happen. Why not? Right? To them, the risks are too high, right? They're like, it's all risk. By the way, contractors hate risk, and they're the last people to be involved because they make money by doing things that look just like the last thing they did, right? Because they know how to do it. They know the partners, they know the costs, right? And there's very little uncertainty in there. So when you add uncertainty, that's when they get uncomfortable. But if the architect insists, then they'll be like, okay. One thing I want to just pick up on is we recognize the importance, essentially from the beginning, of a warranty. That warranty is the part of that says this is going to last and it's going to work in the long term. Because if we were to sell a product and not offer a warranty, is as much as saying is like, we don't know it's going to work at all. And no one wants to hear that, right? They want to know that you stand behind your product, and that if something goes wrong, you'll come and fix it. And ultimately, that's just what people want. They want their stuff to work. So as for specifications, I think that's sort of like maybe the tip of the iceberg. You can't just get through this with specifications alone. It has to be a partnership. They need to understand the expectations and the process. And a big part of the process is flexibility. And their flexibility in saying like, hey, normally our specs look like this, but since we want to work with you, we'll make them a little bit different to match what you have available. Ultimately, I think architects are going to be the change makers in this space because they are the arbiters, for the most part, of which materials go into buildings. That said, a lot of this material selection is by committee. And so ultimately, almost every person in this committee has a veto voice. And so there are different ways to do it. The contractor's veto voice is by price or by excluding warranty, right? They say, oh, that's going to cost too much money. You can't do that. Eric, I don't know if you've heard that one, right? Reclaim wood is like, no. This is never going to work. It's 5 times the price. Not that they even looked, right? And so that's just a process of getting them through and comfortable with the differences, and them eventually getting to a point where it doesn't feel risky. And so it's getting all these little players involved, and they all got to be in alignment for us to get onto a project. And so as a result, we lose a lot of projects. We have 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3. You know, there's even people like the higher ups are okay with it, but then the project manager level people are not. It's just a really complex interplay, and it just takes patience and time and determination. But ultimately, the more it's out there, the Larry, I think the title of this webinar is great. The again and again of this, and it's the fact that we're just like doing dozens of projects a year is going to ultimately say like, there's something here. Maybe we can look at this. Maybe it's not as risky as we thought it was.
Andrew, you hit on a perfect point about the contractors. We work with a lot of demolition contractors who get it. The economics are a no-brainer for deconstruction and reclaiming building materials, but they work for general contractors that don't get it, that have a different incentive, that have a different payment milestone or a different schedule, or they put the schedule together in a box without the demolition contractor. And so we see a lot of buildings demolished and smashed up, and the owners pay more for that than if it was deconstructed. Because the GC doesn't understand the economics. They don't understand that says, hey, if I gave my demo contractor a little bit more time, they can reclaim all this material instead of spending hundreds of dollars per ton hauling it to the landfill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I'll give one little anecdote on that. I bid on a project at a local university, and the winning contractor, I had sent them the proposal after I had to asked to find out who all the bidding contractors are, which is a separate challenge, knowing who's bidding. And they're like, well, you were lower, but we went with the other guys instead because, you know, that's who we always work with. Literally told me that, right? It's like, that's like the essence of the problem is like, why would I do anything different? Because like, I could just do it the same.
I've been complaining about construction costs for years. Why would I do anything different? I'm just going to keep complaining and keep spending, right? It's like general contractors. They complain about their low margins, and they're very good at complaining about their low margins, but they're not going to do anything different to increase those margins.
Exactly. Oh boy. Yeah. Wow. Well, that was a lively discussion.
So that's why we need the regulators, right? We need the cities and the agencies and those that actually, you know, own responsibility for the waste, right? Because at the end of the day, the municipalities are the ones that typically own landfills or own the rights to the landfills or are responsible for disposal within their areas. And so they're the ones that have to have that vision that says, you know, we can't keep doing it the same way. I think the current stats are about 60 years, all the landfills in the US will be full. And that was before China stopped accepting all of our so-called recycled plastic, right? So, I mean, I'm sure they're filling up faster these days with all that single-use plastic that no longer gets shipped overseas. And if you thought permitting a new building took a while, imagine a landfill.
Yeah. And where you live, Eric, out in the Bay Area in Oakland, they are looking at some 3-year timeframes for the filling of landfills, and some of them have been filled, and some of or actually a large percentage of San Francisco's waste gets loaded onto barges and carried to other parts of California and then sent to other places.
I wish it was barges. It's 100% trucked out of San Francisco, about 60 miles east of San Francisco into a big mountain. Yeah,
I just learned about the ships the other day, so I may be wrong.
Maybe it's a new way they're getting out of San Francisco.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It was a recent thing. So
historically it's been trucked.
Yeah, exactly. But it's getting hauled, and that is not cheap. So anyway, I'm going to keep us on track here for time. And Andrew, I was going to come right back to you with a quick one. I want to take this opportunity to ask you about your plans for the future of Doors Unhinged. Do you plan to expand other locations or multiple outlets or franchise or license your business model or other innovations to help further this effort to grow the ecosystem of reuse with what you've already done?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So I think absolutely. I mean, our goal really is to maximize reuse of high quality building materials. And so part of this we'll do directly, part of it we'll do indirectly by encouraging and fostering the ecosystem, which hopefully we'll talk about some more in a little bit. I think our first growth, we have 2 growth trajectories. One is geography, being able to service more markets. We are based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Our next growth area is probably going to be the East Coast, New York to DC market. We have a little bit of work in New York. We're looking at stuff that's maybe a little bit outside Pittsburgh. Surprisingly, we've done pretty well just within Pittsburgh, but I think to get to that really like next level, how that growth happens, whether, you know, we're having little satellite locations, is sort of an open question. I think it also depends on partners and the state of demand in a particular city. We're not going to show up with zero demand. We need people to be customers and be patient customers so we can get there. The second growth area I would say is product type. We are looking to, I mean, this is a stretch goal, but I think it's a big opportunity to remember what I said about taking materials and making it look like what the customers are asking for. Well, we want to literally do that. We're going to take these doors and run them through sanders. And the real consternation is the veneer, which is 1/40th of an inch of the exterior of the door. And so let's replace that. We're going to sand that off, put a brand new veneer on. Great opportunity for reclaimed wood there. 100% reclaimed door, but we would still retain 95, 98% of the original door, and then have it be in the veneer and then in the finish that the customers are asking for. So I have that mostly reclaimed door that's gone through a remanufacturing process to turn it into that brand new product. It's tricky. It's going to be complicated, and we're going to this fall going to start really prototyping that process. We actually have some internships open that are going to work with some of our onboard staff to really kind of figure out how we actually do that and do that at different scales. The last thing I'll say about this, Larry, was about franchise. And I looked at that, and that like kind of makes me wrinkle my nose that I think the traditional franchise model is like, I mean, I just think of like Subway, you know. It's like I can't I'm like, we're not going to be the Subway of like reclaimed doors. I think it's more there's a new model there. It's going to be more complex and more I would say in some ways open source, where we are a network, and thanks Sean. Sean said we're going to be McElsworth. So,
McElsworth.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Oh, that's great.
So, where was I? No, so it's a network, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
and some point you're the buyer, and some point you're the seller, right? So think of it more like real estate, where we're really running transactions that way, but occasionally we're on the seller side and occasionally we're on the buyer side, right? And we want to move material through this network that has franchise-like qualities to it. You kind of need to buy into a central network. But I think there's value and innovation that any individual partner could bring to it. So hoping to see something like that happen, but that involves an entire ecosystem, and we'd love to see that evolve.
It does. But you are working on that ecosystem, and so is Eric, and so am I. And that's, yeah, that's good. So would you like the 6-inch door or the 12-inch door? Oh, sorry. No, that's Subway. Never mind. Eric, back to you. You and Urban Machine have been getting some great exposure, great press, Forbes magazine. You won a startup pitch competition at South by Southwest. You've got some international recognition and requests from faraway places like Israel for your machines. You're adding people to your organization all the time, engineers, marketing, and in my opinion, you have some real winners on your team. How are you using this newfound influence to not only build Urban Machine, but to influence the growth of what we've been talking about, the ecosystem of deconstruction and reuse, because I know you're so passionate about that. What avenues and opportunities are you seeing that you did not see a year ago?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, it's been a big challenge building a great team that can get out there ahead of the curve, right? So we don't have a product to sell today, right? I'm not selling machines. I'm still, 1 to 3 years away from actually selling machines. We're going to operate them ourselves like we're doing currently. get them to a steady state at some point in the next couple of years where we can lease them out and then eventually start selling them, right? So when you got a roadmap like that, you have to have revenue at some point. And so we sell reclaimed lumber today. So we're a robotics company that's selling reclaimed lumber, primarily here in Northern California, close to where we're based out of Oakland. And kind of on that roadmap, what we have to do because of the capital project's life cycle is so long, the evangelizing we're doing today will turn into hopefully specs and drawings that are specifying deconstruction and reclaimed materials 2 to 10 years down the road.
Yep.
Right. We can't wait until we have a fully mature product. We have to start building that sales pipeline. And kind of to Andrew's comment there about product fit for the customer. You know, one of the biggest challenges with reclaimed material, we take down a building and we end up with an inventory of sizes. Now we can remill that material and make it smaller, a little bit easier than doors. But then every time we make it smaller, we're throwing material into the compost bin, right? Because when I take a 4x16 and I shrink it down to a bunch of 2x8s or something, there's a lot of offcut or downfall that comes from that material, which isn't the most efficient use. And so what we're trying to do is create that market demand and get the architects and engineers out there thinking about reclaimed lumber products. And those are, whether it's just pure lumber or it's engineered products that we're manufacturing, and trying to accelerate that whole adoption curve. We can't wait for the general contractors of the world to figure out reclaimed lumber, right? Nope. We'll all die. We're all going to starve. So what we're doing is we're pushing that demand in the forms of contracts and specifications, evangelizing with architects that says, hey, look at what's available these days. Put it in your specs, talk with your owners, and you can reclaim it from your own buildings, right? If you're taking down a building on a site, reuse the material. And by the way, you're going to save some money. And that gets people interested, when we tell them about the economics and the changes there. And we educate the architects. A lot of it's educating them about how do you spec reclaimed lumber. Right? How do you specify not just reclaim lumber, but reclaim materials as a whole? Because they're starting to play with steel, they're starting to play with windows, they're starting to play with doors, other components in buildings. And some are easier than others. When you get into finished items like doors and windows and casework and stuff, it's harder when you say, I need 500 doors to all look the same. Well, do I go find another building with 500 doors? Or the great thing is now you can reach out to Andrew and his team and say, hey, we need 500 doors that look like this. And he can use maybe it's 100 different looking doors and then reskin them so they all match. That's huge, right?
That is huge.
That really, fixes a problem in the reclaimed issue. And so that's why we're doing all that evangelizing, is letting people know what's coming. And then the government officials and the regulatory agencies can go out there and say, hey, look, the tech is coming. Now we can put deconstruction ordinances in place. Now, instead of, the contractors whining, oh, it's going to be expensive and there's no market for it. Here's the technology, here's the markets for it, here's the supply chain, here it's all coming. And so we can all work together to make it happen. Otherwise, if we all wait for each other's products to become mature, never going to happen.
Nope.
Right. And so that's why we like working with companies up in Portland, Oregon. We spent a lot of time chatting with folks up there because they have a decon ordinance. Palo Alto, California, San Antonio, Texas, all have decon ordinances. And so we tend to get engaged with demolition and deconstruction contractors around those areas who have to meet government compliance and work with those folks. And we're working with other agencies that are starting to write those deconstruction ordinances to help incentivize. And we send them your way, Larry. Yeah. Because we are not government grant writers. But we tell them about here's the technology that's coming to support it. Right. And here's the solutions and how we can bring those costs down so they don't get the pushback. Because what it's going to do is it's going to set up local ecosystems. We've talked to a couple government agencies where they're like, hey, we've got these old housing stocks. They're dilapidated housing. They're falling down. We have this blighted area. We don't want to send it to a landfill. And by the way, we have a population that we need to employ. Right. So how do we take our housing stock and turn it into a raw material that can now lead to local employment? Take that local raw material, finish it, and turn it into finished products within their urban area, right? Because if you're far from the trees, historically, you weren't logging, right? You didn't have any logging forces. That's cool. City of Boulder's got one too.
Yep.
So they're popping up, which is awesome. Thanks, Emily. But you're creating a local supply chain, an ecosystem, because you can take that raw material, we can get the metal out of it with our machines, and then you can feed it into local wood manufacturers who can turn it into building components to resupply your local housing stock.
Exactly.
Dramatic reduction in carbon footprint. If you're
Yep.
looking at sustainability, most people are trucking your lumber 1,000, 2,000, truck or train, 1,000, 2,000 miles, depending on where you are in the country. That's a lot of carbon and
Yeah.
cost.
Yep. Yeah. You guys are both talking about this whole ecosystem. I'm so glad of that, because it is. You're both working in different areas. You're frontiersmen out there, staking a claim and building a camp, which leads to building a town, which leads to a city. But it's that whole progression that you're willing to lead out there and do. And so I so appreciate that and respect it. So anyway, keeping it on pace here, Andrew, you founded an organization called All for Reuse. This speaks volumes about your entrepreneurial spirit and growing leadership. It also speaks to your desire to not only build a business, but to influence and to help build the entire ecosystem of reuse. Please tell us about your vision for that and the organization's mission to achieve that vision. And I can only give you about 2 minutes.
Okay. I'll go. I talk really fast if I need to. Listen, just a couple things to correct you on. It's not an organization, it's sort of a network. I am a co-founder and I have tremendous partners in it that I want to give a shout out to. I can't say all your names right now. And I would say the vision is of the ecosystem, not of the organization. And so really it is robust, regionally based, multi-material, all working together. The opportunity to ride on the backs of demand from local governments, universities, and large corporations to allow those new businesses to emerge. I actually say there are only 2 things we need in this ecosystem. And I'm sorry, folks, policy is actually not one of them from where I stand. Number 1, customers. That the government policy of their own procurement is the only thing that counts to that, in my opinion. From a government's regular policy telling other people what to do, we're not there yet. We'll get there. Number 2 is enterprises, right? Maybe government policy can help on that as well. But that's all it's going to take. Having buyers and then having sellers. And everything else is going to solve itself. Okay? So what are the things that we're going to do to help make those things possible? It's patient demand, right? That is like, we will buy this when it comes. That's like green power commitments. You go build those wind farms and in 5 years, I'll be your buyer. That's what we need in reclaimed materials. That's what local government can do. Incubation. Eric made great points about there are people there that need to be employed. There are entrepreneurs there that need space and equipment and relationships and network, right? How do we get that all together and grow that in a regional basis that can eventually all work together on a super regional and national basis? That's essentially the essence of All for Reuse. I'll drop a link in the chat and I'll turn it back to you on that one, Larry.
Okay.
That's my fast version.
I wish you were passionate about that, Andrew. Jeez. Yeah. Okay, Eric, last one. You and I have spoken about plans to expand, and you touched on it a little bit about and providing urban machine service on site for your production of used materials, while also increasing the number of urban machines in your service fleet. So you just said that it's going to be about 3 years before you actually start building the fleet to sell it, I think you said, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken. So can you speak a little bit more about your business model and how you plan to get more machines out into the world, doing what they're doing for you as your own fleet, and then selling machines? Because I want one for what we're talking about. But...
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's when we release a product to market and you sell a product to a customer, it comes with a manual and a warranty and uptimes and SLAs and all that good stuff. There's a lot of years of R&D and engineering that goes behind that to get it to that where, we call it the Staples Easy button. You turn it on, you feed it wood, and out comes clean wood, right? And so obviously we don't want to lease or sell machines that don't hit that criteria. So we've set a really high bar for ourselves. So what our roadmap is to get this service going is we're operating here in NorCal this year. Next year, we're going to build about 12 systems, deploy to about 6 major metropolitan markets here across North America, and go out and start to do a small production run next year. We'll be operating those machines again next year in conjunction with our partners, early adopters on those. Before in 2025, our goal is to hit mass production. To go after those 37 million tons just here in the US, we believe it's going to be somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 machines that will have to be produced. So this is not a small problem we're tackling.
Wow.
And then, when you start throwing in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Northern Europe, all these other wood structured and wood processing countries, it's a massive scale up operation. But that'll start in 25. So we put together, a realistic roadmap on how do we mature the technology, how do we keep our customers happy, engaged, get it to market as soon as we can without, burning customers. We don't want to do that. Lots of other startups have made that mistake. We know not to do that because the best thing for everybody is for us to be successful, right? If we bring this technology in and we're successful, our customers are successful, it creates local economies that can now source and process wood and turn it into ecosystems and all around that raw material. And it's a sustainable product. It's a great natural product. So there's just a lot of wins into it, and it keeps it out of the landfill, right? Anytime we're taking a waste product, our demo contractors we work with, they're like, how many truckloads can I drop off at your shop, right? So instead of sending the truck to a landfill, they're like, how many you want? And I'm like, well, I can fit 2 in my warehouse, right? And so we had 2 show up, a year and a half ago. And then we continuously collect as much material as we can because we're saving them money. It's greener for them, right? Instead of sending it to a landfill and getting some diversion percentage, right? Ours is typically north of 95%. So it's a huge win. And then we can tell the story of it that says, hey, this building got torn down over here, and now it's being used over in this building over here. Which is cool. It's a fun win.
Very cool.
I'm sure Andrew can do that as well. Say, hey, these doors came from this historic building or over here, track the history of it, show it off as a new door on this project, throw some QR codes on there, and then you got some history to go with it. It's pretty cool what you can do with some of these materials. You can't really do that with steel and concrete.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's our roadmap that we've built for ourselves. And so far, we're following it.
Nice. Well, congratulations on keeping up on the pace of that. And it sounds like it's going to do the proverbial hockey stick in terms of production here. So yeah, good. And make sure my name's on the order one line,
Yeah.
get it in early. I don't want to do the Tesla model where I got to put, $1,000 or whatever up front, but if I have to, whatever. Okay. So thank you both, gentlemen. And here we go to, yes, it's time for Q&A. So we have, what do we got left? We got about 5 minutes left. And I'm looking in the chat. Let's see, Emily Freeman, that was a comment, not a question, but Tracy Taylor out on the East Coast. Hello, Tracy. You asked who is in the trenches to share a cost comparison, buying, constructing with new versus buying, constructing with reclaimed. So thanks, Tracy. Nice to see you. Gentlemen, either of you want to pick that one? Who's in the trenches to share those cost comparisons?
Ooh, I would say your architects. So it depends on what you're doing for cost comparisons. If you're doing an individual material, say wood, for example, you can reach out to us. If it's doors, I'm sure Andrew's got some on doors. But if you're doing a whole building, right, and buildings are consisting of thousands of products, I would chat with your designers because they can either pull together multiple case studies from the different manufacturers. And again, it's what are your incentives, right? It's still early days for reclaiming material in terms of doing, we see it a lot of pieces of buildings, an architectural facade, a particular wall or garden or something like that. So it's still small pieces, what most people are doing. But we've also connected with some clients that are trying to go much bigger, where they're trying to look at 25% reclaimed content, 50% reclaimed content, and keep pushing the bar primarily to drive down their carbon footprint. If you've got a client that's building a building that is measuring their embodied carbon, the best thing they can do is use existing building materials. The virgin ones are, if you do like lumber, for example, it's 10x virgin lumber carbon footprint compared to reclaimed. It is a huge delta on your carbon footprint. And so very similar with other materials. You look at steel, concrete, doors, windows, all your components, your virgins are 10 plus X multipliers over reclaimed. And so that's what some of these clients are looking at. But again, they're still early on. So we haven't seen case studies on entire buildings yet. I imagine over the next couple of years, we'll start to see a couple. But there's a lot of designers that are running the math on the carbon calculation and then tying it to cost and time as well to come up with the benefits of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll jump in on that and say,
Please do.
it all depends. It's a terrible answer, right? Who wants to hear that?
Yeah.
But it depends on, like, I think, like Eric said, which materials you're using, who you're working with. There's even situational things related to your materials. And so the nature of your project, all these kinds of things can contribute. Find partners. You know, that ultimately there's no one out there that's running those numbers because there's not enough examples and there's not enough suppliers, there's not enough customers, right? You heard that one before. So you're going to have to really do it yourself. And I would urge you to start on a product by product basis. What's exciting about what Eric's doing is that reclaimed wood has consistently been probably 2x, 3x of virgin wood in cost, right? When it's barn lumber, right? There's so much manual labor in that, right?
Yep.
But it's the labor. That's the labor. This is the problem. And if we can bring those labor costs way down, then your cost of reclaimed lumber can come way down as well. I mean, there's hopefully going to be other examples of it, but some very basic products like carpet and ceiling tile are just like, it's hard to make a business doing that right now in really low volumes. And so your costs are going to be higher. And then most people are going to be like, I'll just buy new because it'll probably look better anyway. So until we can get that point where we can really like level the playing field, so to speak, or really like elevate reuse, then you're kind of a little bit on your own. We'd be happy to help a little bit, but yeah, good luck.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, we have less than a minute to go. And I see some other comments and I see another question. I'm sorry, we won't get to that at the moment because we got to wrap it up because people are at lunch and at work and so forth. So wrapping it up, our purpose here is to enlighten our audience with these innovators and innovations, and that plays a part into our deconstruction policy accelerator, and which is there to help cities and counties create and implement well-crafted, effective policy and incentives for long-term solution to a huge problem of construction and demolition waste. We can't cover it all in one webinar, so we'll be hosting an ongoing educational series of webinars, workshops, and boot camps to engage with us, recapture it, and our DPA, the Deconstruction Policy Accelerator. We've got several packages for all needs, plus custom consulting. Our website for more information will be available very soon, but not now. So please contact me directly. Here's our contact information for the three of us, Andrew, Eric, and myself. And I thank you all for being here. Eric, your passion is outstanding and your innovation is amazing. And Andrew, same goes for you. Just great energy. You guys are both working so much on this whole ecosystem thing, but you're down in the trenches working on the parts of it and then elevating that up and becoming examples that other people can use to go and do similarly in other areas. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are colleagues, you're pioneers, and you're experts. And I want to thank our audience also. And I see some people, some friends of mine out there. And Carol, I'm sorry we didn't get to your question today, but anyway, I can answer that for you later or pass it on. Spread the word. See you at the next webinar. We're taking the month of August off because we got a lot of travelers, and we'll be back in September. And remember, waste is not waste until it's wasted. So thanks, Eric.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Larry, for having us.
Thanks, Larry. Eric.
You got it.
Really appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
I'll send the recording out to everybody so you know where that is. So if you want to go back to it. Okay. Thanks. Bye.